Hana stepped off the transport ship and immediately felt small. Station Primus stretched out before her like a city in space, its metal corridors wide enough to fit buildings. Everything here was built for beings much larger than her. The ceilings rose high above her head. The doorways could fit 3 of her standing side by side. Even the air felt different, thicker somehow, as if the station itself knew she didn't belong. She was one of 5 humans in a class of 200 cadets. The Galactic Defense Academy accepted students from dozens of different species across the Allied systems. Humans had only joined the galactic community 30 years ago. They were still the new ones, still trying to prove they deserved a seat at the table. Hana pulled her bag closer and walked toward the assembly hall. Other cadets moved around her like a river flowing past a stone. A massive Draknir warrior, easily 2.5 meters tall, nearly knocked her over without even noticing. His scales gleamed under the station lights thick as armor plates. His muscles rippled with each step. He could probably tear a steel door off its hinges. Hana was 165 centimeters tall. She weighed 58 kilograms. Next to these aliens, she looked like a child. The assembly hall was enormous. Hundreds of cadets gathered in formation, organized by species. Hana found the small human group near the back. 4 others stood there looking just as overwhelmed as she felt. A young man with sharp eyes nodded at her. Kim Minho, according to his name tag. Beside him stood Park Ji-won, Choi Dae-hyun, and Yoon Sera. They were all strangers to each other, brought together only by their shared humanity. Nobody spoke. What was there to say? They all knew the truth. They were the weakest beings in this room. The first physical assessment began the next morning. Hana stood in line at the pull-up station, watching the other cadets perform. A Quellan cadet, a being with 4 arms, completed 50 pull-ups without breaking a sweat. A Brekka cadet, covered in natural armor like an insect, didn't even seem to feel the strain. The Draknir warriors moved through the exercise like it was nothing, their powerful bodies built for exactly this kind of work. Then it was Hana's turn. She jumped up and grabbed the bar. It was designed for larger beings, thicker than she expected, harder to grip. She pulled herself up once, twice, 3 times. Her arms began to shake. 4, 5. She gritted her teeth and tried for 6, but her muscles gave out. She dropped to the ground, breathing hard. Laughter echoed from somewhere behind her. She turned and saw 3 cadets watching her with obvious amusement. The biggest one, a Draknir with dark green scales, grinned at her with too many teeth. His name tag read Kralvex, did you see that? He said to his friends, not bothering to lower his voice. 5 pull-ups. My little sister can do better, and she's still in youth training. The Brekka cadet beside him, Thorn, clicked his mandibles in what might have been laughter. Why did they even accept humans? They're too weak for real combat. The Quellan cadet Velis crossed all 4 of his arms. Political charity. That's what I heard. The humans begged for a spot, and the Alliance felt sorry for them. Hana's face burned, but she said nothing. She moved to the next station. Strength testing. She had to lift a weight above her head and hold it for 30 seconds. The standard weight was 80 kilograms. She could barely get it to her shoulders before her legs started shaking. She held it for 12 seconds before dropping it. More laughter. Kralvex's voice carried across the training floor. Little Breaker. That's what we should call her. She'll break before she ever becomes a warrior. The name spread quickly. By the end of the day, other cadets were using it too. Little Breaker became the joke that everyone shared. Even some of the other humans kept their distance from her, as if her weakness might be contagious. After the assessment, Instructor Rindara called Hana aside. The instructor was a Vex, an insectoid species with compound eyes that seemed to see everything. Her exoskeleton was covered in scars, each one a story from some old battle. She looked at Hana with what might have been pity. Cadet Lee, she said, her voice buzzing slightly. Your performance today was concerning. I'll improve, Instructor, Hana said quickly. Perhaps. Rindara tilted her head. But you must understand, this academy is designed for warriors. Not every being is meant for combat. Your species is new to this. There is no shame in choosing a support role, engineering perhaps, or medical services. These are honorable positions. Hana felt something cold settle in her chest. Permission to prove you wrong, Instructor. The instructor's mandibles clicked softly. Then you must endure, Cadet Lee. The others will mock you. They will test you. You must not respond to their provocations. Words mean nothing in war. Only results matter. Yes, Instructor. As Hana walked away, she muttered under her breath too quietly for anyone else to hear. You'll pay for every word. That night, Hana couldn't sleep. She lay in her bunk in the human quarters staring at the ceiling. Around her, the other human cadets slept soundly or pretended to. Nobody had spoken to her since the assessment. They were all dealing with their own struggles, their own fears. Hana pulled out her datapad and accessed the Academy's historical database. If she couldn't match these aliens in strength, she needed to understand them better. She needed to find their weaknesses. She read about the Draknir, powerful warriors, yes, but their evolution had favored explosive strength over endurance. Their thick scales protected them but added weight. Their forward-facing eyes gave them a blind spot behind and to the sides. The Brekka had natural armor that could deflect knives, but their joints were vulnerable, just like any other creature. Their thick shells made them slower to change direction. The Quellan had 4 arms and incredible reflexes, 3 times faster than human baseline. But their complex nervous system meant that pain affected them more severely. A strike that would annoy a human might disable a Quellan. Every species had evolved for their home world. They were perfectly adapted to specific environments. They were specialists. Humans, Hana read, were different. Humans had evolved not to excel at one thing, but to survive anywhere. Earth had forced humanity to adapt to deserts, ice fields, jungles, mountains, and oceans. Humans could eat almost anything. They could survive in almost any climate. They could heal from injuries that would kill other species, and humans could endure. While other species evolved for quick hunts or short battles, humans had evolved to chase prey for days, to outlast anything that tried to escape, to keep going long after every other creature had collapsed from exhaustion. Hana smiled in the darkness. She was weak now, yes, but weakness was temporary. The galaxy didn't understand humans yet. They saw small frames and fragile bodies. They didn't see what lay beneath. They didn't see the part of humanity that had climbed to the top of Earth's food chain not through strength, but through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. Over the next few weeks, Hana trained, not during regular hours when everyone could see her struggle. She trained in the early morning before anyone else woke up. She trained late at night when the facilities were empty. She ran until her legs screamed. She lifted weights until her arms trembled. She practiced combat forms until her body moved without thinking. The mockery continued. Krelvex never missed an opportunity to remind her of her place. During formation runs, Velis would trip her, then apologize as if it had been an accident. In the mess hall, Thorn would spread rumors loud enough for her to hear, talking about how humanity's acceptance was just politics, how they didn't really deserve to be here. Even the other humans avoided her now. Minho looked away when she passed. Jiwan pretended to be busy. Daehyun and Sarah ate at different tables. Nobody wanted to be associated with the weakest cadet in the class, but Hana kept training, kept learning, kept preparing. Because she had made a promise and she intended to keep it, they would pay for every word. 3 weeks passed and the mockery only grew worse. Hana had hoped that if she kept her head down and worked hard, the other cadets would lose interest. She was wrong. Being ignored would have been a blessing. Instead, she had become the Academy's favorite target. During combat drills, Kralvex always chose her as his sparring partner. He claimed it was to help her improve, but everyone knew the truth. He enjoyed showing off. In front of the entire class, he would toss her aside like she weighed nothing. The first time he had at least pretended to hold back. Now he didn't bother. He would grab her arm and throw her across the mat, hard enough that she hit the ground with a sound that made other cadets wince. "Sorry, little breaker," he would say, his voice dripping with false concern. "Did I use too much strength? I keep forgetting how fragile you are." Instructor Rindara watched but said nothing. This was part of training, she explained. Combat wasn't fair. Enemies wouldn't hold back just because you were smaller or weaker. If Hana couldn't handle training, she certainly couldn't handle real war. The other cadets took Kralvex's behavior as permission. During formation runs, Velis would use his superior speed to cut in front of Hana, forcing her to stumble and fall behind. Thorn spread his rumors more boldly now, talking about how humanity had only been accepted into the Alliance because the Council felt sorry for them. Other species joined in, aliens Hana didn't even know, all happy to have someone below them in the social order. Even worse was the isolation. The other human cadets had completely distanced themselves from her. Kim Minyo actively avoided her in the corridors. Park Ji-won changed tables in the mess hall if Hana sat nearby. Choi Dae-hyun and Yoon Sera pretended she didn't exist. They were struggling too, she knew, fighting their own battles to prove humanity belonged here. They couldn't afford to be dragged down by association with the weakest link. Hana ate alone. She walked to classes alone. She existed in a bubble of isolation, surrounded by hundreds of beings but utterly apart from all of them. But alone meant something else too. It meant nobody saw what she did in the hours between midnight and dawn. The Academy's training facilities were open all day and night, built for species with different sleep cycles. Most cadets trained during standard hours, when instructors were present and they could show off for each other. The late night shift was nearly empty, occupied only by a few nocturnal species who kept to themselves. This was when Hana really trained. While Kralvek slept, confident in his natural advantages, Hana ran. While Velis rested his forearms, Hana practiced forms. While Thorn relied on his armor, Hana studied every species' weaknesses in the database. She discovered something the galaxy hadn't fully understood about humans. Every species in the Alliance had evolved on a single world, adapted to one environment. The Draknir came from a high-gravity planet, which gave them their strength but also meant they tired quickly in standard gravity. The Quellan evolved on a world with thick atmosphere, which made their reflexes lightning fast but also meant they needed more oxygen than most other species. The Brekka came from a world of predators, which gave them their armor but made them rely on defense over agility. Humans were different. Earth had every environment crammed onto one planet. Frozen poles and burning deserts, deep oceans and high mountains, dense jungles and open grasslands. Humanity hadn't evolved for one perfect environment. They had evolved to survive anywhere, to adapt to anything. That adaptability was humanity's real weapon. And Hana intended to use it. She studied biomechanics, learning how to use leverage instead of strength. A being twice her size had twice as much mass to move. If she could control their momentum, make them work against themselves, strength became irrelevant. She practiced on the training dummies, learning the exact angle and timing needed to redirect force instead of absorbing it. She studied endurance. While other species had evolved for short, intense bursts of activity, humans had evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. A Draknir could sprint faster than Hana, but over distance her efficiency would win. She ran every night building her stamina, learning to control her breathing and heart rate. She studied pain tolerance. Most species experienced pain as an immediate stop signal. Touch fire, pull back instantly. But humans had evolved to push through pain, to keep fighting even when injured. She practiced taking hits on the training dummies, learning to absorb impact and keep moving. Most importantly, she studied psychology. Fear was a weapon, but it worked both ways. These aliens feared her weakness because it reminded them that they could be weak too. They mocked her because her presence challenged their assumptions about strength and worth. If she could turn that around, if she could make them doubt themselves, she could win before the fight even started. A month into training, during a survival exercise in the Academy's zero-gravity combat sphere, something changed. The exercise was simple in theory. Remain active in zero-G for as long as possible while completing navigation tasks. The challenge was that zero-G exhausted most species quickly. Without gravity to push against, every movement required core strength and precise energy control. The Draknir cadets went first, confident and powerful. They lasted an average of 45 minutes before their muscles burned out from the unfamiliar stress. The Brekka cadets, weighed down by their armor, lasted barely 30 minutes. The Quellan cadets did better with their multiple limbs, lasting about an hour. Then it was the humans' turn. Minyo lasted an hour and 10 minutes, earning respectful nods from the instructors. Jiwon managed an hour and 20 minutes. Daehyun and Sera both made it to an hour and a half. Hana was last. She entered the sphere while the other cadets watched through the observation windows. Some were tired from their own attempts. Others had come just to watch Little Breaker fail again. The first hour was uncomfortable but manageable. Hana moved efficiently, using minimal energy for each task. She had studied the patterns, learned the most efficient routes through the sphere. The second hour was harder. Her muscles began to burn, but she had felt worse during her midnight training sessions. She controlled her breathing, conserved her energy, and kept moving. At the 3-hour mark, the observation room grew quiet. Even the instructors were watching now. Hana was still moving, still completing tasks. She wasn't fast, but she was steady, relentless. Kralvex had lasted 42 minutes. Thorn had managed 38. Velis had reached 1 hour and 5 minutes. Hana passed 4 hours, then 4.5. Her body screamed at her to stop, but her mind was stronger. This was what humans did. They endured. They continued long after every reasonable being would have quit. At 5 hours and 12 minutes, Instructor Rindara finally called an end to the exercise. Not because Hana was failing, but because the next training block was scheduled to begin. Hana exited the sphere, her body shaking with exhaustion, her clothes soaked with sweat. The observation room was silent. Cadets who had been laughing at her for weeks now stared with something different in their eyes. Not quite respect yet, but the beginning of doubt. The solid certainty that humans were weak had developed its first crack. Instructor Rindara approached Hana as she caught her breath. The insectoid's compound eyes reflected the overhead lights, making her expression unreadable. But her voice had changed, just slightly. "Interesting performance, Cadet Lee. It seems your species has certain advantages we had not fully appreciated." Hana nodded, too tired to speak. But inside she smiled. They were starting to see, not just the weakness they expected, but something else. Something that made them uncomfortable because they couldn't quite name it yet. Over the next few days, something shifted in the academy. The mockery didn't stop, not entirely. Kralvex still called her Little Breaker. Velis still made his cutting remarks. Thorn still spread his rumors. But there was an edge to it now, a nervous quality that hadn't been there before. They had seen her refuse to quit. And somewhere deep in their evolutionary programming, prey animals knew what it meant when a predator refused to stop chasing. Then came the challenge. It happened in the mess hall during evening meal. Hana was eating alone as usual when Kralvex approached her table. His massive frame blocked out the light. Behind him, dozens of cadets watched, sensing drama. "Little Breaker," he said, his voice carrying across the hall. "I've been thinking. That zero-G exercise was impressive. For a human. But it made me realize something. We've been too easy on you. Let me fix that." Hana looked up at him, waiting. Her face showed nothing. She had learned that much, at least. "Never let them see fear. I challenge you to the crucible," Kralvex announced. "Traditional unarmed combat. You and me. In front of the entire academy. Let's see if Little Breaker can last 30 seconds against a real warrior." The mess hall erupted in excited chatter. The crucible was an old military tradition, a way for cadets to settle disputes or prove their worth. It was completely legal, sanctioned by the academy. Combat continued until one fighter submitted or was incapacitated. Refusing a crucible challenge meant automatic expulsion for cowardice. Hana could feel every eye in the room on her. The other human cadets looked horrified. Minho actually stood up as if he might protest, but Jiwan pulled him back down. This wasn't their fight. 5 days felt like both an eternity and no time at all. The entire academy buzzed with anticipation. Betting pools had formed within hours of the challenge. The odds against Hana lasting even 1 minute stood at 95-1. The odds of her actually winning were so astronomical that most bookmakers refused to even post them. Hana spent every spare moment preparing. She watched Kralvex's fight recordings until she could predict his movements before they happened. She studied Draknir anatomy until she knew their physiology better than her own. She trained her body, passed exhaustion, and then kept going, because that was what the fight would demand. On the 3rd day, Park Jiwan found her in the training room at 2 in the morning. Hana was running through combat forms, her body slick with sweat, her movements sharp despite obvious fatigue. Jiwan stood in the doorway for a long moment before speaking. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "Take the medical withdrawal. Tell them you injured yourself in training. It's not worth dying for." Hana didn't stop moving. And then what? Go home? Tell Earth that humans can't compete here? That we're too weak? Better than being dead. "Hana, he's going to kill you. Even if he doesn't mean to, the strength difference is too much. One wrong hit and I know the risks." Hana finished the form and grabbed a water container, drinking deeply. "But this isn't just about me anymore. Every human who comes after me will be judged by what happens in that arena. If I run, it proves them right. We're too weak, too fragile. We don't belong." Jiwan's face twisted with frustration. And if you lose? If you get broken in front of everyone, how does that help? Hana smiled, and there was something cold in it. Who said I'm going to lose? The day of the crucible arrived. Hana woke early, her body sore but ready. She ate a careful breakfast, high in protein and complex carbohydrates, fuel for what was coming. Her hands were steady as she wrapped her fingers in the traditional combat tape. No shaking, no fear, just cold, calm focus. The central arena was the largest space in the academy, a massive circular platform surrounded by force fields. Seating rose up on all sides, enough space for thousands of spectators. Every seat was filled. Cadets from every species had come to watch. Some hoped for a good fight. Most had come to see the human finally learn her place. In the preparation room, Hana stretched slowly, methodically. She had studied Earth's ancient fighters, the ones who survived impossible odds. Boxers who went 15 rounds. Martial artists who defeated opponents twice their size. Soldiers who held positions against overwhelming force. They all had one thing in common. They understood that toughness wasn't about not getting hit. It was about getting hit and standing back up. The door opened. Instructor Rindara entered, her compound eyes gleaming in the harsh light. She studied Hana for a long moment. Last chance to withdraw, Cadet Lee. There is no shame in recognizing a superior opponent. With respect, Instructor, I disagree. There's only shame in not trying. The instructor's mandibles clicked softly. You have studied him. You have a plan. It wasn't a question, but Hana nodded anyway. Yes, Instructor. Will you share this plan? Make him exhaust himself. Survive long enough that his advantages become disadvantages. Rindara tilted her head. A strategy of endurance. It is very human. Very unlikely to succeed. But possible? The instructor was quiet for a moment. Everything is possible, Cadet Lee. Even the improbable. But possibility and probability are different things. That's all I need. A possibility. The arena announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, calling the fighters. Hana walked out of the preparation room, through the tunnel, and into the bright lights of the arena. The noise hit her like a physical force. Thousands of cadets cheering, jeering, shouting. The sound was deafening. Kralvex was already in the arena. He wore traditional Draknir combat wraps, showing off his muscular frame and thick scales. He looked like something carved from stone and brought to life, a warrior from ancient legends. When he saw Hana, he raised his arms and roared, playing to the crowd. They roared back. Hana looked impossibly small in comparison. She wore standard academy training gear, nothing special, nothing impressive. As she walked to her starting position, the crowd's noise changed. Some still cheered, but others grew quiet. A few even looked away, uncomfortable with what they were about to witness. At the center of the arena, Instructor Rindara stood between them. Her voice, amplified by the arena's systems, carried to every seat. This is a formal crucible challenge. The fight continues until one fighter submits or is incapacitated. All academy rules of combat apply. Deliberate lethal techniques are forbidden. Do both fighters understand? Yes, Instructor, Hana said clearly. Oh, I understand, Kralvex said, grinning at her. Don't worry, little breaker. I'll try not to hurt you too badly. The crowd laughed. Even some of the other humans looked pained, as if they couldn't bear to watch but couldn't look away either. Rindara stepped back. Fighters, take your positions. Begin on my mark. Hana settled into her stance. She had chosen a defensive posture, low center of gravity, weight balanced. Kralvex settled into an aggressive stance, confident and powerful. Begin! Kralvex charged immediately, exactly as Hana had predicted. He came at her like a freight train, intending to end the fight in seconds. His fist came at her head with enough force to crack stone. Hana moved, not backward, which is what he expected, laterally to his left into his blind spot. His fist passed through empty air. His momentum carried him forward, unable to stop. He crashed into the force field boundary, the impact shaking the arena. The crowd gasped. That wasn't supposed to happen. Kralvek spun around, more surprised than hurt. He had expected her to try to block, to match strength with strength. Instead, she had simply not been there. He charged again, more carefully this time. Hana stayed mobile, circling, forcing him to follow her. Every time he committed to a strike, she was already moving. She wasn't faster than him in pure speed, but she was more efficient. His strikes required his whole body, telegraphed seconds in advance. She only needed to move a few centimeters to make him miss. 1 minute passed. The crowd began to murmur. She was supposed to be down by now. 2 minutes. Kralvek was breathing harder, his strikes coming faster but less controlled. Hana remained calm, her breathing steady. 3 minutes. Hana struck for the first time. As Kralvek overextended on a punch, she darted in and delivered a precise strike to his forward knee. It wasn't powerful, but it hit the joint at exactly the right angle. He stumbled slightly. The crowd roared, though Hana couldn't tell if they were cheering for her or for Kralvek to finish this. 5 minutes. Kralvek's scales were darkening with exertion. His species had evolved for short, explosive combat. Extended fighting drained them quickly. Meanwhile, Hana was sweating but controlled. This was her environment now. Endurance. Persistence. The long game. She began targeting the same knee repeatedly. Every time he moved, she found a way to strike it. Small hits, individually meaningless, but accumulating damage. His movement began to slow on that side. 7 minutes. The arena had gone mostly quiet now. This wasn't the quick, brutal fight they had expected. This was something else, something uncomfortable to watch. The small, weak human was still standing, still moving, while the mighty Draknir warrior was visibly tiring. Kralvek knew it too. His confidence was cracking. He threw a desperate haymaker, putting all his remaining strength into it. Hana saw it coming from a mile away. She ducked under it, and as his arm passed over her head, she struck his exposed elbow joint with precision. He roared in pain. The sound echoed through the arena, not just anger now, but genuine hurt. 10 minutes. Kralvek was breathing hard, his movements sluggish. His injured knee was compromising his stance. His elbow was swelling. Hana had taken hits too. Her ribs were bruised. Blood ran from a cut above her eye where a glancing blow had caught her. But she was still moving, still thinking, still fighting. She could see doubt in his eyes now. The certainty that he would win had evaporated. He was in pain, exhausted, and the small human in front of him looked like she could do this all day. 12 minutes. Hana shifted tactics. She had spent the fight learning his patterns, understanding his diminished capabilities. Now she became the aggressor. She moved in, striking his injured knee repeatedly, forcing him to adjust his weight. Then she targeted his ribs, the softer tissue between his scales. Each strike made him flinch. Kralvek tried to grab her, to use his strength advantage, but she was too quick. She slipped away from his grip like water, always moving, always just out of reach. 15 minutes. The arena was silent except for the sound of the fight. Every cadet in the stands was leaning forward, unable to believe what they were seeing. The instructors watched with professional interest, taking notes on their data pads. Kralvek could barely stand now. His pride wouldn't let him submit, but his body was failing. Hana had systematically broken him down, turned his advantages into weaknesses. His strength meant nothing if he couldn't land a hit. His size meant nothing if it just made him a bigger target. His armor of scales meant nothing when she targeted the gaps between them. Hana saw her opening. Kralvek put weight on his bad knee, and it buckled slightly. She swept his legs, taking them out completely. He fell hard, the R. The news spread beyond the academy within hours. A human cadet had defeated a Draknir warrior in single combat. The story traveled through the Allied systems like wildfire. Some said it was luck. Others claimed it was impossible, that the reports must be exaggerated. But the recording existed and it told the truth. Inside the academy, everything changed. Cadets who had mocked Hana now avoided her eyes when they passed in corridors. Nobody called her Little Breaker anymore, at least not where she could hear them. The silence felt strange after weeks of constant mockery. She wasn't sure if it was better or worse. Kralvex disappeared for 3 days after the fight. When he finally emerged from his quarters, he moved stiffly, his knee still healing. He saw Hana in the corridor and stopped. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then he nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement, and walked past without a word. But Velis and Thorn were different. They grew quiet, yes, but their eyes held something darker than shame. Resentment. Anger. Hana could feel it whenever they were near. She had humiliated their friend and, by extension, humiliated them. That kind of wound didn't heal with time. It festered. The other human cadets suddenly wanted to be her friend. Kim Minho started sitting at her table in the mess hall. Park Jiwon asked to train together. Choi Daehyun and Yoon Sera smiled at her in the corridors. They acted as if the past weeks had never happened, as if they hadn't abandoned her when she needed allies. Hana was polite but cold. During one evening meal, when Minho sat across from her and started talking about how proud he was of what she had accomplished, she interrupted him. "Where were you when I needed allies?" she asked quietly. Minho's smile faded. "We were dealing with our own struggles. You understand how it is. I understand that you chose safety over solidarity. That's fine. It was your choice. But don't pretend we're friends now just because I want to fight." The table went silent. After a moment, Minho stood and moved to another seat. The other humans avoided her again after that, but this time it felt different. Before, they had avoided her because she was weak. Now they avoided her because her words had made them look at themselves, and they didn't like what they saw. 2 weeks after the crucible, Instructor Rindara called Hana to her office. The instructor's quarters were sparse, decorated only with weapons and battle honors from her long career. She gestured for Hana to sit. "You have proven something important, Cadet Lee. You have shown that humans can compete at this academy. Therefore, I am promoting you to junior squad leader. You will command a mixed species unit for field exercises." Hana felt her stomach tighten. "Thank you, Instructor. Who will be in my squad?" 30 cadets representing 12 different species. Your first exercise is in 3 days. A combat simulation in hostile terrain. Rindara paused. Cadets Velis and Thorn have been assigned to your unit. There it was. Not a reward then, a test. Put the human who had embarrassed them in charge and see what happened. See if she could lead beings who resented her authority. I understand, Instructor. I hope you do, Cadet Lee. Leadership is not about winning one fight. It is about earning the trust of those who follow you. Some of your squad members will not want to follow a human. You must prove that you deserve command. The first squad meeting was tense. 30 cadets gathered in the briefing room, looking at their new squad leader with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. Velis and Thorn sat in the back, their body language radiating contempt. Hana kept her briefing short and professional. She outlined the exercise objectives, assigned roles based on each cadet's species strengths, and answered questions without emotion. When Velis asked, with barely concealed mockery, if she was sure she could handle leading a real combat unit, she simply said yes and moved on. The combat simulation took place in a section of the station designed to mimic hostile alien environments. Their objective was to secure a forward position while under simulated enemy fire. It was meant to teach coordination, communication, and leadership under pressure. Hana studied the terrain carefully before they deployed. She assigned positions, established communication protocols, and set clear objectives for each team member. She put Velis in charge of the mobile assault element. Thorn would handle defensive positions. She knew they would follow orders because refusing would result in immediate expulsion, but she didn't know they would actively sabotage the mission. The simulation began normally. Her squad moved into position, secured the initial objectives, and established a defensive perimeter. The enemy simulation began its assault with automated weapons and combat drones. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Then Velis made his move. During a critical moment, when Hana ordered the assault team to advance on an enemy position, Velis deliberately delayed. He claimed communication issues, but Hana could hear him clearly on the command channel. The delay allowed enemy forces to reposition, compromising their entire strategy. Then Thorn's defensive position mysteriously developed gaps that let enemy units through. Again, he claimed equipment malfunction, but Hana saw the truth in his body language. He had done it deliberately. The simulation was falling apart. Other squad members, sensing something wrong but not understanding what, became confused. Orders were questioned. Coordination broke down. Within minutes, the carefully planned operation became chaos. Then the equipment malfunction became real. Someone in maintenance had made an error, and the simulation weapons began firing live rounds instead of training markers. The exercise should have stopped immediately, but the safety systems failed. Suddenly, 30 cadets were under real fire from automated defense turrets with no safety protocols active. The first cadet to get hit was Thorn. A burst of fire tore through his defensive position, and his natural armor, strong as it was, cracked under the impact. He went down hard, screaming in pain. "All units fall back." Hana's voice cut through the panic. "Emergency extraction protocols. Move now." But they were pinned down. The turrets had them in a crossfire, and falling back meant exposing themselves to even more concentrated fire. Standard protocol said to call for emergency extraction and minimize casualties. Rescue would arrive in 20 minutes, but 20 minutes was too long. The turrets were systematically eliminating targets. Already 3 more cadets were down. Velas was trapped under debris from an explosion, his forearms struggling to free himself. Hana made a decision. Not the safe decision, not the one that would look good in a report, but the right one. "All units, listen to me," she said, forcing her voice to stay calm. "We're not waiting for extraction. We're taking those turrets out ourselves." "That's suicide," someone shouted over the channel. "No, that's survival. Here's what we're going to do," she explained quickly, her mind racing through the tactical situation. She would use her small size to access a maintenance tunnel that the larger cadets couldn't reach. From there, she could manually shut down the turret system. But someone needed to draw the turret's fire while she moved, and that someone would be completely exposed. "I'll do it." Kralvex's voice came over the channel. He had been assigned to her squad despite their history. "I can take the hits better than anyone here." "You're still recovering from your knee injury," Hana said. "I'm also the strongest one here. This is what I'm built for. Let me do it." There wasn't time to argue.
"Fine, Kralvex, you're the distraction."
"Everyone else suppressing fire on my mark. Make them think we're all pushing forward together. I'll slip around to the maintenance access." It was a desperate plan held together by hope and courage, but it was better than waiting to die. On Hana's mark, Kralvex charged forward, roaring his challenge. The turrets focused on the largest threat, their targeting systems drawn to his massive frame. The rest of the squad laid down covering fire, creating chaos in the turret's sensor arrays. Hana ran. Her smaller size let her move through the rubble and debris that would have blocked larger beings. She found the maintenance shaft and crawled inside, her body barely fitting through the narrow space. The sounds of combat echoed behind her, mixing with the screams of the wounded. Inside the shaft, it was dark and hot. She crawled forward, following the maintenance markers toward the central control node. Behind her, she could hear the battle continuing. She could hear Kralvex's roars as he took hit after hit, his body armor absorbing fire that would have killed most beings. She reached the control node and tore open the access panel. The system was a mess of alien technology, but she had studied enough engineering to understand the basics. She found the turret control circuit and physically ripped it out, sparks flying around her hands. The turret stopped firing. Silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the sounds of the wounded and the crackle of small fires. Hana crawled back out of the maintenance shaft. Her hands were burned from the sparks. Her body was covered in scrapes and bruises, but she was alive, and more importantly, her squad was alive. Rescue teams arrived minutes later, flooding the area with medical personnel. Thorn was loaded onto a stretcher. His armor cracked, but his life saved. Velas was pulled from the debris, injured but alive. Kralvex stood in the center of the battlefield, his body covered in scorch marks but still standing. In the medical bay afterward, as medics treated her burns, Thorn. 6 months had passed since Lihana arrived at the Galactic Defense Academy as the weakest cadet in her class. Now, as graduation approached, she stood as field commander of a 30-cadet mixed-species unit. Her squad included former enemies and new allies, Kralvex, Thorn, Kim Minho, Yoon Sera, and dozens of others who had learned to respect the small human who refused to break. The final trial was called the War Games, a massive combat simulation that every graduating class had to face. It was designed to be impossible. Cadet squads had to defend a strategic position against overwhelming assault for 2 hours. The attacking force consisted of veteran instructors and adaptive combat AI. No graduating class in the Academy's history had ever succeeded in holding for the full 2 hours. The record was 47 minutes. Most cadets hoped to beat the record. Hana intended to win. Instructor Rindara announced the exercise details in the main briefing hall. 50 veteran cadets and 200 combat drones would assault a fortified position. The defending squad would have standard equipment and whatever defensive measures they could construct in the preparation period. "Your objective is simple," Rindara said, her compound eyes sweeping across the assembled cadets. "Hold the position for 2 hours. Use any tactics you wish, any strategy you can devise. But understand this, we will not hold back. We will use every advantage we have to break your defense. This is meant to teach you that sometimes the enemy is simply too strong." Most squad commanders immediately began planning conventional defenses, layered positions, overlapping fields of fire, standard military doctrine. They would follow the textbook and hope to last longer than previous classes. Hana did something different. She went to the Academy's historical database and studied Earth's military history, not alien warfare but humanity's own brutal lessons. She read about Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans held against thousands by using terrain to negate numerical advantage. She studied Stalingrad, where defenders turned every building into a fortress. She learned about guerrilla warfare, where smaller forces defeated larger ones through adaptation and unconventional tactics. Her squad members were skeptical when she presented her strategy. It wasn't neat. It wasn't by the book. It was messy, desperate, and relied on things the Academy rarely taught: improvisation, psychological warfare, and the human concept of making the enemy pay for every meter of ground. "This is insane," Velis said, studying the plans. "Half of these tactics violate standard doctrine." "Standard doctrine assumes equal forces using similar strategies," Hana replied. "We're not equal. We're outnumbered and outgunned. So we don't fight their fight. We fight ours." Kralvex nodded slowly. "I've learned not to doubt you. If you say this will work, I believe you." "I'm not saying it will work," Hana corrected. "I'm saying it's our best chance. And I'm saying that if we're going down, we're making them remember us." The war games began at dawn. Hana's squad occupied a defensive position in a simulated urban environment, a small cluster of buildings surrounded by open ground. Standard tactics said to fortify the buildings and create kill zones in the open areas. Hana had other plans. She turned the entire area into a nightmare. Her squad spent their preparation time creating false positions, collapse zones, and hidden traps. They stored weapons in multiple locations, allowing them to fall back and rearm instead of being eliminated when overrun. Most importantly, she divided her force into teams with specific roles: defenders, harassers, and a mobile reserve. When Instructor Rindara's assault force appeared on the horizon, they saw exactly what they expected: a fortified position with defenders in clear positions. Easy targets. The first assault wave charged forward, confident in their superior numbers. They hit the outer defensive line and broke through in minutes, exactly as Hana had planned. But as they pushed forward, they entered the real battlefield. Hidden charges collapsed buildings onto advancing troops. Retreat routes turned into ambush points. What looked like the main defensive position was actually a trap, defended by drones and automated weapons. The real defenders were hidden, waiting. The assault force found themselves fighting not for every building but for every room, every corridor, every doorway. Progress that should have taken minutes took half an hour, and with each meter gained they paid in casualties and exhaustion. 30 minutes passed. The assault force had captured less than a quarter of the position. Instructor Rindara, commanding from a tactical position, studied the battlefield with professional interest. This wasn't going according to plan. 45 minutes. The assault force was still advancing, but slowly, grinding through determined resistance. The defenders seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, appearing to strike and then fading away before overwhelming force could be brought against them. 50 minutes. The record was broken, but Hana's defenders showed no signs of stopping. Kralvex led the mobile reserve, counterattacking wherever the assault force tried to consolidate gains. Velis commanded the harassment teams, striking from unexpected angles. Thorn anchored the main defensive positions, his natural armor making him perfect for holding key choke points. At 1 hour, Rindara committed her best units, including herself. They expected to break through the exhausted defenders. Instead, they found something that caught them completely off guard. The defenders were still fighting with the same intensity as the beginning. More than that, they seemed to be getting stronger. What the assault force didn't understand was the human concept Hana had taught her squad: morale. While attackers grew frustrated with slow progress and mounting casualties, defenders grew more confident with each successful hold. While attackers questioned their tactics, defenders trusted their training and each other. At 90 minutes, Hana ordered something that conventional tactics would never allow: a counterattack. Kralvex led a strike team directly at the enemy command post. It was a desperate move, and it created chaos in the assault force's coordination. The psychological impact was devastating. Defenders didn't counterattack. They held and died, but these defenders were attacking, and suddenly the assault force was off balance, reactive instead of proactive. At the defensive junction, Velis found himself surrounded. 3 combat drones had him pinned down, his forearms not enough to hold them all off. For a moment, he thought this was it. Then he remembered Hana's words from training: "We never leave our people behind." He screamed, not in fear but in defiance. "Not one step back!" The cry was taken up by others. Human words, spoken by alien voices, all of them united by a concept Earth had learned through countless wars. Sometimes you hold not because you can win, but because your brothers and sisters depend on you. The assault force heard that cry and felt something they rarely experienced: doubt. These defenders should be broken. They should be begging to surrender. Instead, they were screaming defiance and fighting harder. At 1 hour and 45 minutes, with 15 minutes remaining, the assault force made their final push. Everything they had, all their remaining strength, focused on breaking through the core defensive position where Hana commanded. Hana stood at the center of the defense, her uniform torn and dirty, a cut bleeding above her eye, but her voice still clear and strong. "All units, this is it. 15 minutes. We hold for 15 more minutes and we win. Not just the exercise. We win everything. We show them that humans, that all of us together, are stronger than they thought possible. Hold the line!" The final assault was brutal. Combat raged room to room, corridor to corridor, casualties mounted on both sides. The simulation's safety protocols were pushed to their limits as the fighting reached maximum intensity. Kralvex held a doorway single-handedly, his massive frame blocking an entire squad of attackers. Thorn fought in close quarters, his armor taking hits that would have killed others. Minho and Sarah covered each other's backs, moving as one unit. Velis used all 4 arms to hold 3 different firing positions simultaneously. And at the center, Hana commanded, her mind processing dozens of inputs, coordinating 30 defenders against 250 attackers, finding weaknesses, adapting strategies in real time, embodying the human gift for improvisation. 2 hours. The alarm sounded, cutting through the sounds of combat. Simulation complete. The war games were over. Silence fell across the battlefield. For a long moment, nobody moved. The assault force stood in the positions they had fought so hard to reach, still meters away from overrunning the core defensive position. The defenders stood at their posts, battered and exhausted but unbroken. Then slowly, realization spread. They had held. For the first time in Academy history, a cadet squad had held for the full 2 hours. The simulation weapons powered down. The lights came up. And across the battlefield, something unprecedented happened. The assault force began to applaud. Veteran instructors, hardened by decades of war, showing respect to the cadets who had done the impossible. Instructor Rindara removed her helmet and approached Hana's position. Her compound eyes reflected the overhead lights as she studied the small human who stood, swaying slightly from exhaustion, but still standing. "Cadet Hana, explain your success." Hana straightened despite her injuries, despite the exhaustion that made.